Baseball fans, it is time once again for another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. With over 50 years in professional baseball and making a multitude of fantastic relationships along the way, Frank Coppenbarger shares great stories with weekly guests from various areas inside of the game. Let's get ready to play ball. Here's Frank Coppenbarger.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. We got another outstanding guest this week, a guy I've known for many years, longtime Major League third baseman, former All-Star, former world champion, Tom Herr joins us. Tom, welcome, man.
Thank you, Frank. Glad to be here, but I was a second baseman, my man.
I thought I said second.
You said third baseman.
Hey, I'm getting old. I'm
not Mike Schmidt here.
Well, we can start over if we have to, but I know you were a second baseman. Anyway, my apologies. Second baseman, I knew that. I just got a little ahead of myself, evidently, but we'll take it all the way back to when we first met, which was in Springfield, Illinois, in AAA baseball. Back in 1979, you were a second baseman for the Springfield Redbirds, and I was the clubhouse guy. And who would believe it, but for the next 12 years, at least parts of those 12 years, we were together with the same team in Springfield, St. Louis, and also in Philadelphia, which is pretty amazing. But it's great to have you with us. We appreciate it. We're going to talk about your great career in the game and some other stuff. And I want to start right away. You were an outstanding athlete at Hempfield High School, just outside of your home there in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'd been doing a little reading up on you. I knew that you were a good athlete, and particularly basketball. I didn't realize that you were a star quarterback of the football team. You were the all-time leading scorer for the high school in basketball. And, of course, we knew you were a great baseball player. But talk about your time there in high school and kind of how it all started for you.
Yeah, well, I grew up here in a small town in Lancaster called East Petersburg, and I was a normal kid that loved sports. We would get back in that day, you could ride your bike around the town, and you didn't have to worry about getting kidnapped or anything like that. So, I would be gone all day over the summer, riding my bike all over town. We'd set up a diamond on the church parking lot and play baseball, or we would have a football game out in the street, a 3-on-3 game, or we'd play basketball in somebody's driveway. And I even swam on the swim team in the summertime at the local pool. So I was busy and played every sport, and really loved every sport. My dream as a kid was just to play a professional sport. I didn't really care which one it was, and obviously baseball worked out because for my size and skill set, that was the best choice for me. But as you said, I had a very nice career in high school basketball, and really thought that I was going to go play college basketball somewhere, and football. I loved football too. I was being recruited as a quarterback at a few schools, and so that was always kind of in the thought process as well. But things worked out for me perfectly. Some of the offers I had in basketball and football kind of went by the wayside because of coaching changes, and even though I didn't get drafted in the baseball draft in June of '74, I was playing Legion ball that summer, and was having a good summer and got seen by, probably at least a half a dozen scouts. And the Cardinal scout got on me that summer. And by the end of the summer, I had like five offers to sign a professional contract. And I chose the Cardinals only because they made the best offer. And I had a very good rapport with their scout. His name was Tim Thompson.
Right. Yeah.
And so I ended up signing with the Cardinals and going to spring training the following spring in 1975.
So I wanted to ask you about that. First, I wanted to back up just a little bit because I was reading some stuff about you and in high school there. And I know the Legion baseball was a big deal back in those years. There weren't all these travel teams like there are now. And Legion baseball was highly competitive all over the country. And that was like, for a high school kid, about the best baseball you could play, really. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, it was. It was really the only option that you had. There was no travel baseball back then. And, every town had its own youth organization that had teams together. But when you age out of those, the only thing left is Legion ball.
Yeah.
And really, you can only play Legion ball up until you're 18. And so, yeah, that Legion baseball in Pennsylvania back then was it was a big deal because they put together a nice tournament at the end of the year for the best teams, and then also they always put together like an all-star. It was a series of all-star games that Major League Scouts would get to come to and rate the players. And each game they would pick a few players to move on to the next game. And that culminated in an East Pennsylvania versus Western Pennsylvania game. And I got chosen to play in that game and did very well and hit a couple home runs in those all-star games. And I wasn't a home run hitter, but for some reason I hit a couple in those games. So that kind of fooled the scouts. They thought I was a power hitter, I guess. But anyway, I got a chance to sign, and that's all I wanted. And, I was about as green as you could get when I went to spring training that following year. But you learn fast.
Did you go to college first? Did you enroll at the University of Delaware before you went to spring training?
I was set up to go to Delaware, and I went, even though I signed in August.
Right.
And I had to sign before I got into college because if I wouldn't have done that, I would have had to wait till I was 21 to sign. So
right.
I signed and went to the first semester at Delaware, and then kind of did that for a couple years. I would drop out after the first semester and then go to spring training in the spring. And I did that for, I think, 3 years until it looked like my career was going to, get me to the big leagues. And then I really didn't have to keep going to college at that point.
So I wanted to ask you, I read that you were nearly a Duke Blue Devil. I can't even talk here today, from your college basketball exploits, and then a coaching change kind of changed that plan. Did you play any basketball when you went to Delaware, or did you know that you were going to just be there for the first semester?
Yeah, the thing with Duke was I went to, between my junior and senior year, I went down to Duke for a basketball camp, and they had, at that time, their interim coach was a guy named Neil McGahee, and he really liked me. He had taken the place of Bucky Walters, who had gotten fired. And so Neil was on me after he saw me at camp and was recruiting me and wanted me to come down there for an official visit and so forth. But then they took the interim tag off of him and actually hired somebody else, coach by the name of Bill Foster. And I got a letter from Bill Foster and basically saying that, he or his staff hadn't seen enough of me or really anything about me. And they had their own kids they were recruiting. So he said I should go somewhere else. So that was devastating to me at the time, but it really was good because it really kind of opened the door for me to make a decision about baseball, and it turned out to be a good decision.
Oh yeah. Well, we're going to get to that in a second. But did you try the hoop team at Delaware or not?
Well, I was there, and at that time, freshmen couldn't play on the varsity team. They had a freshman team, and they did ask me to come out and help out with just to be another body in practice, because they were having some issues with injuries, and guys were, I think one of the couple key players weren't getting good enough grades to stay on the team or whatever. So they knew that I was a good player, so they asked me to come and kind of be a part of the freshman team, which I did. But I knew that wasn't going anywhere, and I hadn't picked up a basketball for really all summer, and so I was not in great basketball shape, and my skills weren't what they needed to be to play at the college level, even as a practice player. So I helped them out, but that was as far as that went.
Okay. All right. So then in the spring, you headed to St. Pete for your first spring training, and you, I'm sure, were taken in by Mr. George Kissel almost immediately, I'd guess. And talk about him, because everybody we have on here has a great George Kissel story.
Yeah, George was he was very instrumental in my development as a minor league player. I'm not sure how much you paid attention to me that first year, though, because as a non-drafted high school free agent, I didn't get a lot of notice at first. I was kind of as low on the totem pole as you could get, because the way pro baseball is, the guys that get the big money, they get the most opportunities, and being an undrafted player, I was kind of an afterthought, but somehow I survived. I survived those first couple of years, and I was improving very quickly, because I was a good enough athlete that if I just focused on the one thing, which in this case was baseball, my skills were getting a lot better very fast. So, and the other thing that I did that first spring training was dabble with switch hitting, and that really helped me in the long run, because being a switch hitter enabled me to stay on the field every day rather than being platooned, and I became really good at hitting from the left side, because I was a natural right-handed hitter. But from the left side, I was always able to make contact, and I could really run when I was younger. So I could put it in play and get some cheap hits, beating balls out or whatever, and they were never able to throw the ball by me. I could always put it in play, so that helped. And kind of after that first year, I went through spring training and then extended spring training, and then they sent me to Johnson City, which was their rookie club, and I survived that first year. I think I hit 300 with, only had a little over 100 at bats that year, but did well enough that they brought me back the second year, and that's the year I really made some strides, and by the end of extended spring training of that second year, they moved me up to their A club, which was in St. Petersburg. Hal Lanier was coaching that club, and Hal really liked me, and I played very, very well to finish that season out. So that was kind of the season that jump started me, and so the rest is history. I kind of made steady progress through the minor leagues, really after that second year.
Well, you mentioned Hal Lanier, and Hal Lanier was our manager there at Springfield. Then he was a coach for the Cardinals in the big leagues when you were there for quite a long time. He was also a coach for the Phillies for a little bit later on. So you were around Hal quite a bit, but you went from St. Pete, you hit all the stops, Little Rock, Arkansas, Springfield, Illinois. Then you made your big league debut in August of '79, and you had teammates like Lou Brock and Ted Simmons. Pretty cool. Two Hall of Famers right there, or soon to be Hall of Famers right there in the clubhouse. What do you remember about your first days in the big leagues?
Well, it was, it really, it blows your mind when, as a minor league player to get called up to the big leagues. And it's just, there's so many emotions that you go through because, you've worked so hard and you've kind of, it's a war of attrition in the minor leagues, because there's so many things to deal with. And I was able to stay healthy. That was a big thing. And I was able to get better. As I moved up through the organization, I kept getting better and better. And because that's the goal of the minor leagues is to find a level where you can't be good anymore, and then they get rid of you. And I kept on getting better each level. The higher I got. So when they called me up to the big leagues, I think Gary Templeton had gone on the DL, so they brought me up, and they needed. Back then, the DL was like a 15-day DL, so I knew I was going to be up there at least 15 days. And they told me, once Gary got better, I would go back to AAA. So I knew it was a temporary thing, but it was such a thrill to be there. My first night in St. Louis, we were playing the Cubs, and that was the night that Lou Brock got his 3,000th hit.
Oh, wow.
So that was a great milestone in his career, and it was awesome to be there and be a part of that. I think I got the pinch run that game. So yeah, it was a great thrill for me, and to be there in that clubhouse. The Cardinals weren't in contention that year, and we're really going through kind of a change in their philosophy. They ended up bringing Whitey in, I think, the following year, so that was a big move for them, and obviously that was a move that I really benefited from because I was a speed guy, and that was what Whitey liked, speed and defense, and so I kind of fit into his mold as the type of player that he wanted. So that was a good break for me as well.
Well, we should mention that Whitey was brought in as manager, replacing Ken Boyer. And a few months later, they added the title of general manager. And so he decided to go and check out the farm system and see what he had down on the farm at the end of the year. And in fact, I remember him coming to Denver when we, the Springfield Redbirds, were playing Denver in the American Association playoffs. Actually, Whitey came out there to see a lot of you guys play. And, then he took over the team back as manager after that season ended and was manager and general manager at the same time, which is pretty unusual for about a year and a half before handing that over to Joe McDonald. But in '80, you split time. As I said, you were with Springfield, and the Springfield team beat Denver and won the American Association Championship. You also were in St. Louis for a good bit of 1980. In '81, you got back up there. Of course, that was a strike-shortened year, but you were a regular by that point at second base. Got to mention that. And you were a mainstay in the Cardinal infield until they traded you to the Twins in April of '88. What a run you had in St. Louis. I was glad I got to be a fly on the wall in that clubhouse. I'll say that. And I got to be up there starting in '81 also. And one world championship, 1982, two National League pennants, 85 and 87. You were an all-star in '85. And ironically, that game was played in Minnesota. I'm sure you never thought you'd be a Minnesota Twin a couple years later, but that's how it works sometimes. But just give me your memories of St. Louis, if you could.
Well, you're right. It was a great era in Cardinal baseball, and Whitey kind of ushered that winning atmosphere into St. Louis, and brought Whitey ball to the Cardinal fans, and that 1980, that final year in when I was in AAA, the three big prospects in the Cardinal organization at that time were Terry Kennedy and Leon Durham and myself. So that winter, Whitey kind of went wild in the winter meetings, and he ended up trading Terry Kennedy to San Diego, and he traded Leon Durham to the Cubs, and he brought in Raleigh Fingers and Bruce Sutter. So we're sitting there with the two greatest closers maybe of all time, and now he's got to try to figure out how to keep both of them happy. And of course, then that's when he turned around and traded Fingers to Milwaukee and brought in Dave LaPointe and David Green and
Sixto Lezcano.
Yeah, Sixto Lezcano. So there was a lot of wheeling and dealing going on there.
Oh yeah,
and somehow the deal with the Cubs was, from my understanding, was that he offered either me or Durham to as part of that deal to the Cubs, and they had their pick of those two prospects, and of course they took Leon Durham, who had a great run for the Cubs. So I kind of stayed in St. Louis by default because of those three prospects. I guess I was viewed as maybe being the lesser of the three, but I'm glad it turned out that way because
I'm not sure it ended up that you were the lesser of the three.
No, I don't think it did either. But I mean, that's the way it was perceived
right.
Because both Kennedy and Durham were power guys, and
right.
Of course everybody likes the power guys. But I kept on developing as a player. I mentioned earlier that I was getting better at every level, and I got better at the big league level too. I came into the big leagues as kind of a table setter, top of the lineup speed guy, and developed into hitting third in that lineup and being a run producer and an RBI guy. So I don't think anybody really could have foreseen that. But anyway, that's the way it turned out. And those teams in the '80s, we had a lot of weapons, and especially the '85 team was just, I think that was the best team of the three.
I agree.
And I look back at that, if we'd have won all three of those World Series, which we very, very easily could have,
right?
We may have gone down as one of the great teams of our era.
History.
Since we only won one of the three World Series, we're looked at as a good team, and National League champion 3-time, but we couldn't get it over the finish line, and in all of them, '85 was the most devastating because we were definitely the better team that year, the best team in baseball. We won 102 games, and that was the year of the famous Don Denkinger call that I feel cost us winning that series in 6 games. then in '87, we really injured in the World Series that year when we played the Twins and still took them to 7 games. And unfortunately, all 4 of the 7 games were in the Metrodome, where they were really, really tough to beat there. And that was just a brutal place to play for visiting teams. And
Yeah.
we couldn't get it done there. But yeah, it was a fabulous era in Cardinal baseball, and one that I'll always cherish. And for me, it ended in '88 when I was traded in April to the Twins, and that was devastating for me, because I really looked at myself as being a lifetime Cardinal, and but that's baseball. That's the way things go, and it turns out I had an enjoyable year in Minnesota. I made some really good friends there. Gary Gaddy and I became very close, and Greg Gagne, the shortstop there, was a great teammate, and Frank Viola. And so, baseball is a great fraternity, and no matter where you go, you're kind of accepted and develop friendships, and so that's the way it was in Minnesota too that year.
Only bad part was you had to look at the World Championship banner every night when you went out for BP, and they were probably all wearing their World Series rings, which I would like to have played them with Jack Clark and Terry Pendleton in the lineup too, but that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah,
well, let's take a break here. Let's take a break here, and I'll come back in just a minute with more with Tom Herr. All right, we're back with Tom Herr, and we've been chatting about his years with the Cardinals, and it just having been dealt to the Minnesota Twins back in '88. So you recalled some of your teammates there and your experience there in Minnesota. But I want to back up just 1 second. Whitey Herzog, the Hall of Fame manager of the Cardinals, who was your manager basically all those years, except for when you played for Ken Boyer. Whitey, he thought the world of you. I know that. He called you a manager on the field. He thought you were a really cerebral guy. You do the game inside and out. Talk about your memories and your time with Whitey.
Yeah, Whitey was, he was instrumental in my development, because, he's the one that gave me a chance at the major league level. Sometimes, young players come through the minor leagues and they can perform at that level, but doing it at the big league level is the final test. And, but in order to do that, you need a chance. You need somebody to believe in you and give you an opportunity to go out and play. And he did that. He gave me, the confidence to just go out and play my game. And when I was first an everyday player there, he hit me down in the lineup, and I would hit anywhere from 7th, 8th, or 6th, 7th, or 8th in the lineup. And back then there was no DH in the National League, so lineups were constructed a little bit differently. And then as I began to mature physically, I got stronger and started to be able to drive the ball a little bit more. I think Whitey recognized that I was the kind of guy that could hit with men on base, and I give him a lot of credit for putting me in the 3-hole. During that run when we went to the 3 World Series, because in '82 we had Lonnie Smith at the top of the order, who was a really good offensive player and a great base stealer. And but I'm speaking primarily more like in the '84, '85 through '87 years. when Vince Coleman came on the scene and Willie McGee kind of blossomed into a great player. Whitey had the kind of gumption and nerve to put me in the 3-hole because he knew that I didn't strike out much. I could make contact with 2 strikes. He knew I was going to have to take pitches to let those guys run, and then still be able to be productive if I did get 2 strikes on me with them on base. And it really worked out perfectly because if I got deep in the count, I was going to get fastballs to hit because they didn't want to mess with Jack. Because at that point, he might have been the top right-handed power hitter in the National League. He and Mike Schmidt. So, I had that great speed in front of me and a big power hitter behind me. So that was, I give Whitey a lot of credit for getting me in that 3-hole because as it turned out, it really was a genius move because, I did take a lot of pitches to let Vince and Willie run, and then I was still able to, I had a lot of RBIs when I just hit a ground ball out, in the first or second inning with the infield back and a guy on third. We'd be ahead 1-0,
Yeah.
So my RBI totals, went up big time, and I became, I kind of got viewed as a different kind of player than before. I was viewed as more of a run producer, and that was fun for me because everybody likes to drive in runs, and to drive in 110 that year in 1985 was a great thrill, and Vince was going for 100 stolen bases, and I was going for 100 RBIs, and we were in a pennant race, and it was really cool to be a part of that.
Exactly, and then not in '85, but I do recall a really popular and well-known home run that you hit in '87, a walk-off, happened to be seat cushion night. And literally, there were thousands of those seat cushions thrown all over the field. It looked like a blizzard. Yeah. I happened to be down the dugout when it happened, and it looked like a blizzard with those. I think they're still picking them up off that field over there. That was a pretty good night. Pretty exciting, and one of my favorite memories of your career for sure.
Yeah, that was a special night because we had come off our great year in '85, and then in '86 was the Mets year when they got to the World Series and won the World Series, beating the Red Sox in an exciting series. So coming back for the '87 year, we had created some good momentum the second half of '86. We got off to a bad start, but the second half we played very well. So we knew we still had it in us, and we had a real heated rivalry with the Mets, and we didn't want them to go back-to-back years, '86 and '87. So '87 was a real pivotal year for us to come back and show that we felt like we were the better team, and that was an early season matchup with the Mets in Busch Stadium, and that was a tremendous game. That game went back and forth, and the seat cushions. That wasn't the first time that night that a lot of them ended up on the field, but a game-ending home run, and to see those seat cushions coming out of the stands, that was pretty cool.
It really was.
I hit that one off Jesse Orozco, who at that time was the Mets closer and a very good relief pitcher. So it was a great moment, great night, and I've signed a lot of those seat cushions over the years. I'll tell you.
Oh, I bet you have. Yeah, I'll bet. So anyway, you're with the Twins, and you get traded over to Philadelphia at the end of the year, after the year was over in '88. So in '89, we hook up again. My first year in Philly, your first year in Philly. In fact, I remember many nights you used to commute back and forth home after the game. You put a lot of miles on your car back then.
Yeah, I did. My home was about, maybe an hour and a half drive from from Veterans Stadium, and
Right.
depending on the traffic, late at night after games, I could get home fast. But sometimes coming down there in the afternoon was, a couple hours, and I did that when I could. But I also I had a place that I stayed down closer to the stadium. Jim Cott had a farm that I don't know if he owned it or whatever, but he had access to a farm down there, and he would allow me to stay there at that farm in a guest house there. So I did that quite a bit. And Vince Noss was working for the Phillies then. Vince, obviously, and I stayed at his place a couple times too when I didn't feel like when it got too late to go home after games. So, but that was a lot of fun for me to be in Philly. I loved my teammates there. I loved the organization. Lee Thomas was there in his first stint as a general manager, and
right.
So I really wanted to do well there, and actually, had a really good year in '89. My first year there, I was, led the team in hits that year. Was in the top 10 in the National League in batting average, and we weren't a very good team that year. That was the year Schmitty announced his retirement, and it was kind of a transitional phase for the Phillies. But Lee made some good deals, brought some good young players in, and then made the deal to bring Lenny in towards the end of '89, and so we had the building blocks of a nice thing there, as because they're in their early '90s they started winning and got to the World Series after they traded me to the Mets, unfortunately. But I wish I could have stayed there and been a part of that. Yeah,
that would have been great. So as you mentioned, traded to the Mets. You ended up getting released by the Mets in '91, and you signed with the San Francisco Giants, where you wrapped up your career. You retired at the end of that season. And then you went back and coached at your high school, Hempfield High School, where you were a standout athlete, and you coached everything: football, basketball, baseball. Were you even doing that when you were an active player, coaching in the wintertime?
No, I wasn't. I didn't do that until after I stopped playing, and I was fortunate because a good friend of mine was the head football coach and the head baseball coach at Hempfield. So he put me on both of his football and baseball staff, and that was really a lot of fun for me because when your career is over, the competitive juices don't just stop. You still have them. So it was neat to be able to feed that competitive side through coaching and working with young players and so forth, and so that was really a blessing for me to be a part of that. I enjoyed that a lot and did it for many years until I got back into pro baseball. With I took a job managing the independent team here in Lancaster that started up in 2005. So that was.
Right.
That was a great thrill for me too.
So you coached at the high school football, basketball, and baseball, as you said, for a long time. Then the Lancaster Barnstormers of the Atlantic League were formed, and you were the odds-on natural choice to be the manager, the hometown guy, and longtime, major league player and all-star. So that worked out really well for you. You did manage 1 year in the Nationals organization at Hagerstown, and the next year you decided not to go back. But baseball and sports definitely run in the family. Your son Aaron, who I can still remember him as like a 6 or 7-year-old running around the Cardinal clubhouse once in a while, was a first-round pick. I want to say Atlanta, if I have it right. with Braves organization. He didn't make it to the big leagues, but he played in AAA for a long time. And I knew I was getting older when I walked into the clubhouse one morning in Winter Haven to do the tickets before a spring training game when I was with the Phillies. And I was a traveling secretary by that point. And this guy walked up and said hello, and I didn't know who it was at first. And it was Aaron. And about 2 seconds later, Bo Mills, who was also in camp with the then Cleveland Indians, Brad Mills' son, came up and said hello too. So there's two guys I had as kids in the clubhouse. Now they're big league players themselves. That's when you know you're starting to get up there a little bit. But it was fun.
Yeah.
And then your
sure.
other son, Jordan, played baseball at Pitt, and he was drafted by the Cubs but didn't sign, but later played for you over at Lancaster, right?
Well, he played. Let me think. When he played for the Barnstormers, Von Hayes was the manager there.
Von was the manager. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so that he got a little taste of it too. And then actually after the year that he played in Lancaster, he was signed by the White Sox and went to spring training with the White Sox and had a really good spring. But towards the end of the spring, he was having some second thoughts about whether he wanted to play or not, and he had a girlfriend back home, and he decided that was more important than playing baseball. So that's how his.
Well, that's happened to more than one guy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you had a girlfriend back home when you were playing too, but she's still by your side, your teammate and longtime wife, Kim, who I've known you guys forever. And to please give her my regards. But everything sure worked out for you, Tom, in the baseball world. You're in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame, the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame, Lancaster County Sports Hall of Fame, Hempfield High School Hall of Fame. You're in a lot of places, probably a lot more that I don't even know about. But, man, what a fabulous career. And it's been fun kind of recapping it all again with you today.
Well, thanks, Frank. Yeah, I enjoyed talking to you. It's always fun to reminisce about the good old days. And, I'm surprised I remember as much.
Together. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, my wife tells me I remember all the stuff that's not important, but I can't remember what I was supposed to get at the store that day,
That's right. That's the way I am, too.
Right. Well, I sure appreciate it, Tom, and thanks a million. Next week's guest is going to be a guy by the name of Jeremiah Yolkett. He's the Senior Vice President of Global Events for Major League Baseball. And among his many jobs is he's in charge of the All-Star Game, the Home Run Derby, all the international series that are played by big league teams all over the world, the Field of Dream game, the Rickwood Field game in Birmingham. A fascinating job. He's going to tell us all about it. So tune in next week. And please like, follow, and subscribe to our show and the BLEAV Network. And Tom, thanks again. And we'll be back next week to talk to Jeremiah, and looking forward to it. So long, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks with Frank Coppenbarger.